What was so gross that you ended the relationship? Story 1. Dated a guy who said even the smell of mint would make him gag. Mint ice cream, gum, toothpaste. So yeah, he didn't brush his teeth. He just wouldn't hear it when I said there were non-mint toothpastes on the market. I realized after over 6 months together that he was just generally unhygienic and had a specific hang-up about brushing his teeth. He told me he had memories of his mother holding him down to forcefully brush his teeth as a child because he hates mint so much. But I have to wonder if it was always about the mint, or actually the fact that the taste of mint was the most tangible part of that childhood trauma. This is conflicting because it sounds like he had a phobia caused by his mother holding him down like that when he was little. It's either that or he's making excuses because there are so many other flavors of toothpaste. Story 2. I just left my boyfriend of 10 months because he purposefully screams during an argument so that people in his family will hear everything going on. It's his way to make me feel vulnerable and weak. He says things like, "Good, I want them to hear. I want them to know how psycho you are," when I'm persistently trying to end the argument and speak civilly. It's like a temper tantrum. I left him yesterday. I remember being a teen in a friend group who had a guy like that in the group. They would talk about his psycho girlfriends, and one day I finally saw it happen. He was like your ex-boyfriend. They would go a bit away where you couldn't hear them, and then he would yell things randomly like, "I'm done with your craziness!" Yet the girl wasn't yelling. She was quiet. She didn't move. She was calm and she honestly looked scared. One of the times he yelled, he raised an arm and you could see how quickly she flinched away from him. It was so horrible. I tried to point it out, but I was told that I just didn't get it and he is a good dude. He wouldn't do that. No one would listen. 2 years later, he was in jail for beating his current girlfriend so badly that she lost eyesight in one eye and almost died. Suddenly, everyone was saying, how didn't we see the signs? They just didn't want to see them. Yeah, if someone has all crazy exes, you have to ask yourself what the common denominator is. If all his ex-girlfriends are crazy, that generally means they all broke up with him because he was crazy. Likewise, I don't trust those girls that cry about a new abusive boyfriend every 3 to 6 months. Sorry, this isn't how any of that works. Story 3. He asked me if I had ever attempted to seduce my stepdad, who had been in my life since I was 8. I was 18 at the time. I just looked at him in bafflement and horror before asking him if he had ever attempted to seduce his adopted sister. He responded with disgust and yet still couldn't see that he had asked me something horrific. This is the same guy who also said he didn't think anyone was really bisexual. They're just cowards who won't properly come out. When I asked him if he had forgotten that I'm bisexual, he smiled and said, "Nah, I'll show you you're straight." All this said within a month of us getting together. He's an ex for a reason. Uh-oh. Someone doesn't know the difference between real life and certain videos on the internet. Story 4. He would actually cry if I didn't get physical with him. Needed to be touching me constantly and eventually threatening to hurt himself and worse when I tried to break up with him. The guy texted and called for about 5 years afterward. We dated for like 2 months. I had one of those. Blind date. We went out 3 times, maybe 4. She stalked me for 11 years, drove hundreds of miles every weekend or 2 just to lurk in the parking lot of my college dorm, drove past my house, always found me when I moved, kept coming around after I was married, kept coming around after she got married. She sent letters saying she'd leave her husband in a heartbeat if I'd asked her to. The amount of time she invested into driving must have been crazy because we never lived close. It was always at least 45 to 60 minutes one way for her and a little over 300 miles when I was in college. For as many times as I'd see her drive by or parked down the block, I'm more freaked out about the times I didn't see her. There was a point for almost a year when I didn't see her, and then I discovered that she'd gotten a new car. How many times did I not notice her that year? Once a month? Once a day? She finally stopped when her husband had a heart attack. I think she finally realized how much she loved him and left me alone mostly. I still get texts asking how I'm doing though. I work with the public, so my phone number is on billboards and flyers. I never respond. So if we count the current texts after she stopped physically stalking me, I've had a stalker for 28 years. And since everyone asks why I don't just block her, it's because I sincerely believe she would warn me if she was going to do something. I don't know why, but if she ever went off the deep end, I have a feeling she'd tell me she was coming. Story 5. The first night I slept at my ex's apartment, I woke up in the middle of the night to an extremely loud scraping noise. It was inside my ear. A roach had crawled into my ear and was scraping against my eardrums. It was the most awful feeling I've ever experienced. I used tweezers to try and get it out, and when I pulled them out after a few times, only half the roach came out. I had to go to the ER to get the rest out and get antibiotics. I had a horrible ear infection for a couple of weeks. The worst part was her saying, "It happens to my son all the time." I found out she had wrappers and trash under her bed. It has literally haunted me and given me PTSD. When I'm sleeping, if I hear the slightest noise, I jump up and swat uncontrollably around my ears. My wife was shocked the first time I did it when we were dating, but since I told her, she fully understands. I can't get past her saying it happens all the time to her son. I really hope she had family members that could help him get away from his mom, even if only temporarily. Story 6. I showered at his place after staying over and I asked for a towel. He gave me one that had literal skin flakes on it. I asked for a clean one. He asked what I meant. He did not realize that you need to wash towels because they just have water on them, so they clean themselves. Someone asking "what do you mean" when you ask for a clean towel is one of the funniest things I've read this year. Story 7. She was almost perfect for the first year that we dated, to the point where I considered marriage with her. Our leases were up around the same time, so we decided to move in together. Not even a month into us living together, she turned into a completely different person. She started instigating fights over very small things, blowing things out of proportion, accusing me of cheating when I'd have to work late. She'd pack her things to leave, but would never actually leave. She just liked the fight of me trying to talk her down. One day, we were at a movie store in the mall together, and I was looking at the back of a movie at the description. She accused me of oogling over the actress that was on the movie case. She stormed out of the movie store, left the mall, left me there with no ride home, and didn't answer her phone. I got out of there as soon as I could. After I left, she'd text me paragraphs of apologies begging me to take her back, or she'd hurt herself. She sent me pictures of her self-harming. I had to have her number blocked. Then she started stalking me at work and coming to my friend's house that I was staying at. I ended up getting a restraining order against her. Story 8. When I saw his apartment, the smell hit me first. It just smelled like dog pee, and this strong, wet, musty smell. I couldn't be in there without the windows open. Piles of stuff everywhere, so much that it was spreading to the outdoor balcony, and there were Diet Coke cans on every surface. The carpet was so dirty, you could see all around the edges of the wall a little brown accumulation, and the dog wasn't potty trained. While the poo would get picked up, the pee was never cleaned, so it soaked into the carpet, and I learned quickly that if I didn't have shoes on, I might get a little wet surprise soaking through my socks. The kitchen tile always felt sticky and greasy. He rarely did laundry of any kind. In fact, I never once saw him do laundry except the one time I offered to do it for him. He even had a little gaming den he played Fortnite in. Fortunately, the dog wasn't allowed in there, but again, I could see it never being cleaned once. Dirt and dust and stuff piled everywhere, cans and old plates of food left out. He told me once that he wanted to get a mini fridge for it so he'd never have to get up. I was adamant that he didn't. I don't care if it's his place. The next step after that is peeing in bottles. It was shocking. He seemed so put together on the outside. And then to see how he lived and this after cleaning all day, yeesh. I don't know what was more gross. That or the "women don't know what it's like to work, women can't be trusted, women this, women that" comments. It's always the "women don't know what it's like to work" guys that don't know how to do laundry. Story 9. An ex said, "You need a cute job. No need for you to worry and work so hard. I love my job. I'm a nurse." I obviously had no idea what he meant, and when I asked, he suggested hairstyling or babysitting. This same guy, after confiding in him the real reason I don't want biological children, severe endometriosis, from a fairly early age, my cousin also has it and she went through a lot of heartbreak trying to conceive. Many miscarriages and lots of IVF cycles. And I don't think I could handle that emotionally, let alone the risk to my life. He replied with, "Well, you're just gonna have to try really hard then," as if it's an issue of willpower or something, as if some people just aren't working hard enough to have a baby. Story 10. When she was so insistent about not using a condom, and when we were just going about our daily lives, she would constantly talk about how much she's always wanted kids all for herself. We were 18 at the time. I left her in the dust so quick. I left a girl like this who would always try to go from head to on top without a condom, just hoping I'd get caught up in the moment, always talking about wanting kids and acting like it wasn't on purpose. My buddy was from a wealthy family and got into a boating accident as a kid. Long story short, it made him sterile from how the jet ski had hit him, from what I got out of the situation. He started seeing this girl and she seemed really sweet. He said she was the best he had ever been with. He told me that he always wore condoms as a double protection, and to not make the girl feel uncomfortable, even though he was 100% sterile. Can you imagine convincing a girl that you're sterile from a boating accident when you were a kid so you don't have to wear a condom? He said she was a freak in the sheets constantly telling him how she wanted to be impregnated and it was a deep-rooted fetish of hers. He didn't think much of it at the time and she never seemed like the type to rip the condom off and go crazy. So one day she got him going and just hopped on top after a long foreplay session. Well, one thing led to another and it went from every once in a while with promises of being on the pill to more forceful roleplay where she was always in charge and leading. So 6 to 8 months go by and she has a conversation at dinner with him one night. He said the only thing he remembers from the entire conversation is that she said, "How does it feel to know you were the one to breed me?" She kept talking about how hot it was. He booked an emergency doctor's appointment the following week. The doctor got him a fertility test and behold, he was still 100% sterile. The doctor had a 100% certainty that he was sterile the entire relationship. He broke up with her when he got the results back. Then the truth started coming out. She wasn't the sweet girl she made herself out to be. She was a recovering sex addict with a fetish. She was sleeping with a dozen men, some at the same time, some right after one another, and all of them were just average people including her boss and multiple coworkers. She was certain she was pregnant, but the best chance she could have was with him because of his family's money and the support that they would provide. She apologized and said she actually loved him, and what would they do if the baby was actually his? That's when he broke the news that he's always been infertile, that the breakup was absolute, and there was no getting back together, and she seriously needed to go to therapy. A month later, she told him to get checked for STIs because she had been positive for a few months. To this day, nobody knows if she knows who the father is. If she does, she will not speak about it. Absolutely wild to me. She tends to reach out every few months trying to hang out with him because she finally got a babysitter and he just leaves her on red. Story 11. I went away with my ex and saw his toothbrush for the first time. It had black mold growing on it, and the bristles were so flat the toothbrush had a middle parting. I had a conversation with him about hygiene and told him to get a new toothbrush, but when I stayed at his house 2 weeks later, the cursed toothbrush was still there. So I ended it. I tried to have my doubts, but it definitely wasn't charcoal toothpaste. The mold was growing on the bottom of the toothbrush as if it had been partially submerged in water for a period of time, and he brought this on our weekend trip and put it in the little pot in the hotel bathroom. I was horrified. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day. Story 12. I was on a girls' trip I booked months in advance. He showed up there and brought one of the other boyfriends with him. I hated it, but I couldn't do anything but just accept his arrival. He got into a fight with the other girls. He did not involve them either with this surprise. Later on, he kept doing this. Internship abroad, he shows up, forcing my roommate to leave. Having dinner one-on-one with my dad, he showed up. I moved out because I needed space. He booked a trip that we couldn't cancel. I broke up with him afterwards. He kept showing up in my hometown and even my work. It has been 2 years and he texted me congratulations when I got married last year, but all I can feel is anxiety about his control issues. This was in 2018. I haven't heard from him since 2021. Last I heard, he has a girlfriend and he doesn't know where I live now. Also, I think it was a family issue. His mother used to call me after the breakup as well, saying I ruined their lives. I'm glad I got out of that crazy family. One of my college roommates had an ex and mother like this. They had met because their moms knew each other, dated long distance for a few months. She wasn't really into him, so she broke it off. Then her awful mother called her very nasty names and told her that she'd never trick someone that great into dating her again. He'd show up at our apartment all hours of the day and night, unannounced, attempting these grand romantic gestures that were just creepy. I'll never forget waking up at 3 a.m. to him just absolutely pounding on our front door. He was a huge guy, a discus thrower or shot putter or something, and could have easily physically overpowered any of us in the apartment. This went on for months until one night my roommate was really upset about what he was doing and called her mom crying. Her mom said, "I'm on the other line," and hung up on her. Turns out she was on the other line with the stalker ex. She and the ex had been talking on the phone almost every day, scheming about how he could get back together with my roommate. They both sucked, but my roommate's terrible mother sucked more. Her mom was her only family and she knew that her mom was awful, but she just couldn't cut her off. Her mom hated me and our other roommate for supporting her daughter, which she saw as us trying to turn her daughter against her. Years later, when this roommate married a lovely man, the other roommate and I went to the wedding. Her mom was there and would not take her eyes off of us the whole time, staring daggers at us. Just a nasty, terrible woman. I'm so happy the mother didn't manipulate her into being with that terrifying man. And honestly, she didn't deserve an invitation to the wedding. Story 13. I was dating a girl when I was younger. She seemed nice and she had 2 small cats. One weekend, I went to visit her and the cats weren't there. I asked her where they were and she told me they'd gotten annoying, so she put them in the car and drove to an abandoned bush area and left them. I faked an emergency at home. We lived about a 2-hour drive apart. I left and broke up with her when I got home. For those wondering, I did end up going to the area and looking for them, but I had no luck. When I told her I would have taken them if she didn't want them, she just laughed. I'm glad I never saw her again. Story 14. She was so rude to my friends. We went out to dinner with them and she constantly made fun of one's height, something he's clearly been insecure about. I told her to chill and then she said my hairline is far back but no one notices because I'm tall. I broke up with her the next morning. I felt so bad for my friends, but they're still in my life, thankfully. I had something like this happen. I had dated this girl for like 3 months and she was always so sweet. We went out to the bar one night, she had a little too much to drink and started being absolutely awful to people. I know the owners and a lot of the locals, so I was mortified. I apologized to them and tried to take her home, but she wouldn't want to go. When I finally talked her into leaving, on the drive, she said she wanted to come to my house and informed me that if she can't, she would call the police and say I'm kidnapping her. I was dumbfounded. I told her I would do her one better and drive her to the police station right now. She slapped me. Sitting in her little car that I was trying to drive to get her home safe, she slapped me. So I pulled over, grabbed her phone, called her dad and told him to come get her and I would drop her keys off the next day. She apologized many times, but I couldn't get over that insane switch that flipped that night and was never attracted to her again. Story 15. I had gotten to the point in the relationship where he didn't mind me in the bathroom while he used it. He pooped and wiped once, didn't even look at the toilet paper, then started pulling his pants up. I immediately asked him what he was doing and how on earth he thought one little wipe was going to do anything. He said, "I never needed more than one. Look," and then wiped again, probably expecting nothing to be there. There was a lot there. I guess the idea of him just carrying on with his day with it regularly caked up in his crack painted him in a different light for me. Wasn't ever able to reignite the attraction. It probably should have been the human-sized pile of garbage in his room that made me reconsider, but I had further limits than most, I suppose. Story 16. At a party with some of my closest friends and a lot of their mutuals. One of my friends who had recently been diagnosed with cancer was sharing some of his experience with chemo. My then girlfriend interrupted him by saying, "Oh come on, it's not that big of a deal, we all probably have cancer. Moles are usually cancerous. Look, I've probably had cancer in all these places on my arm where I had moles removed." There were a lot of other issues that led to it, but I broke up with her a few days later. I was just so appalled by her lack of self-awareness. These were my friends who I had known for a decade, and she'd only known them for about a year, and we were in a small group of maybe 9 people, most of whom she hadn't even met before. It disgusted me and I couldn't spend the rest of my night with her. Ended it within a week. This reminds me of my sister-in-law who had kidney cancer and was scheduled for chemo. She was desperate and having something of an emotional breakdown. Her sister's boyfriend was a healer. He gave her reassurance and said, "I've had kidney cancer too, and I was able to heal myself." She canceled her chemo. Then he persuaded her to drive to see him once a week, a 7-hour round trip each time. She paid him a lot of money for him to ring some temple bells and chant, etc., until one day she collapsed in pain, urinating blood. She was rushed to the ER and her kidney was removed within a couple of days. Thank goodness it hadn't metastasized. When she came to her senses and confronted him, it turned out he'd never had kidney cancer. It was a metaphor. 15 years later, her sister is still with that guy, and they are estranged from the rest of the family. It was a metaphor? A metaphor for what? What was the kidney cancer a metaphor for? I'm so confused. Story 17. My now long since divorced ex-husband admitted to me after a night of weeping, wailing, and vodka in a desperate attempt to salvage our marriage via radical honesty that he had a high libido as a teen and that he had done a lot of weird things. So many red flags were flown. He'd been a peeping Tom. He'd considered going after a jogger on multiple occasions. He had done things not to be repeated to his 9-year-old mare quarter horse. He took my catastrophic shocked silence as a chance to explain that he needed a step stool to get the right height. Suddenly, the dancer he'd been screwing was unimportant. She wasn't that bad. I realized very quickly that I needed to have a friendly discussion with her for her safety, and I did in fact forget all of my heartbreak. The radical honesty was, in that sense, a success. Story 18. It should have been the time that he fell out of the shower in our Airbnb and was extremely agitated with me afterwards for not trying to save him from falling out. He was 6'2" and 230 pounds. I was about 105 pounds and I'm just under 5 feet. Not sure what I was supposed to do. It also should have been when he pitched a fit and deleted his Facebook event for his 40th birthday because not enough people had enthusiastically responded to it in the 3 hours it was up. Or maybe when he booked a 4-seat reservation at a theme restaurant and invited one of his closest girlfriends, but told her she couldn't bring a guy and had to bring another girl. We weren't quite finished with our drinks when our seating time had run out and went to sit at the communal table to finish and leave. He chatted with his friend and the girl she brought with his back to me. He didn't even notice when I messaged him a picture of the back of his shirt because I was trying to make a point. What actually made me leave was being on vacation with him and having him sneer at me for tipping too much, $5 to his suggestion of 50 cents. You're going to skew the economy here. This is why you live paycheck to paycheck. The dude literally lost any glamour or charm on him at that moment and looked like nothing but a slimy human lizard freak after that. I've never been more repulsed and am still not quite over how disgusted I am with myself for dating him even a few years later. Oh, I have one of those too. It should have been when he got mad that I didn't cook the chicken like his mom did. He also used to say that cooking was my job. It should have been when he gave me the silent treatment for a week because I got home 30 minutes late one time. It should have been when he stopped brushing his teeth and they started turning black around the gums, and I could smell his breath from the other side of the couch. It should have been when he traded nudes with his best friend for weeks, but got mad at me because I found out. Same friend he wanted to have a threesome with and insisted on this for years. It should have been when he started playing a game with me called Let's See How Long You Can Be Quiet For. It should have been when he spent our anniversary weekend with his work friends after he refused to travel with me anywhere for 5 years. It should have been when I saw him eating his boogers at 26 years old. He ended up breaking up with me in the middle of the street and I moved on so fast. By the end of it, I felt so repulsed by him that I really didn't care. For those asking the obvious question, what on earth made you stay that long? Well, it definitely wasn't him that made me stay. I remember I thought he was attractive at one point, but I didn't really want to sleep with him that much. We had good times, but the older I grew, the more I realized that he was very selfish and a mama's boy. Unfortunately, I was living in his aunt's apartment and I couldn't afford moving somewhere else by myself for very long, so I felt pretty stuck. I had no family where I lived, only his, and I was terrified of being alone. I was pretty young too. We started dating at 17, and I started living in that apartment right at 18, so I didn't know better. I thought I didn't deserve any better either. People don't think about all the external forces that keep couples together. There are probably so many couples out there that are only together because they are stuck together. That's why the idea of moving for someone else so they don't have to leave their family is one of my biggest deal breakers. Living halfway between both families is the only way it would ever feel equal. Story 19. He and I had just started dating. He was going through a divorce and was low on money. I invited him up for a romantic weekend, paid for a hotel, room, and food, helped him with gas money, and even gave him some grocery money for the next week. All my treat. I was happy to help. I didn't ask for repayment, just asked him to get dinner next time we saw each other, if he could. He had the absolute audacity to text me when he got home that I was irresponsible with money. To clarify a few things, I had enough of my own money that I was comfortable spending it on a romantic weekend for the both of us. I made it clear to him that I didn't expect anything in return, except if he wanted, and was able to, pay for dinner, or whatever the next time we saw each other. He did go through with the divorce, and last I knew, he was seeing someone else, but I can't be sure since he's blocked me. No hard feelings though, this was a couple of years ago, and thankfully we weren't seeing each other long enough for me to be emotionally invested in the relationship. Very much a bullet dodged. Maybe I'm a little bitter about the whole thing, but I really hadn't given it much thought until this question was posted. He blocked me quite a few months after our relationship ended. He did unfriend me right after, but as we had a few mutual friends, we still commented on a few of the same posts and were cordial to each other. I think blocking me after a few months was weird and cowardly, but I do hope he's happy and has grown up since we dated. Was he embarrassed about having no money and having me spend a decent amount on him? Maybe, but he certainly didn't have a problem when I offered. I didn't force the issue, even with the grocery money. It wasn't a super expensive hotel, hotel. They weren't fancy dinners, and I didn't flaunt the money I had. I just wanted to treat him to a nice weekend because I felt we both deserved it. Wow, how irresponsible of you to show kindness. Story 20. Her breath was so bad I couldn't make out with her. All I could think was, don't vomit, don't vomit. The first date led to a makeout session, but alcohol was involved and it either masked the smell or my liquid courage just made me not give it a second thought. The second date, we ate some super spicy curries, and that either dulled my senses enough or my loneliness got me through it, and we made it to third base. On the third date, both of us just went right to my place and her breath was really unbearable. She went down on me and I was so devastated from her breath that I was just trying not to vomit. I remember in high school something similar had happened with this girl I made out with. She had braces, and she had recently eaten bread or something like that. As we were making out, I noticed that she had a lot of saliva, way more than what was normal. It felt really slimy too, and I was doing my best not to let anything in my mouth. I didn't want to embarrass her or make her feel bad, so I pretended nothing was wrong. After about 5 seconds, I felt a little bit of food, probably bread, that was still in her braces come into my mouth. It made me gag while we were still kissing. I stopped the whole thing, trying to look normal, and left. I don't know if she knew why I was really leaving. As soon as I got home, I brushed my teeth for like 10 minutes straight. Thanks for watching until the end. Please leave your story in the comments below. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.